There are places on this planet where the air feels heavy, where even the most skeptical visitor feels something unseen watching from the shadows. Places where every sound seems amplified, where the line between reality and nightmare becomes dangerously thin. The island of the dolls in Mexico is one of those places. A location so drenched in fear, loss, and dark folklore that it continues to terrify everyone who dares to step foot there. But what makes this tiny, isolated island so disturbing? Why do thousands of people from around the world travel to experience its chilling atmosphere firsthand, only to leave with an unshakable sense that something followed them home? Before we dive deep into the disturbing history and terrifying legends of the Island of the Dolls, take a second to subscribe to this channel. If you love real-life horror, haunted places, and the untold stories that live in the dark corners of our world, this is the place for you. Also, hit the like button to help this story reach more people, and leave a comment with your thoughts or your own paranormal experiences. And most importantly, check out the link in the pinned comment. It leads to a unique opportunity that could help you transform your life in ways you never imagined. Don't miss it now. Let's step into the nightmare, hidden deep within the canals of Xochimilco, just south of Mexico City. There exists a small, forgotten island. From a distance, it looks like any other patch of land surrounded by murky water and tangled vegetation. But as you get closer, something feels wrong. The trees are heavy with the weight of hundreds of decaying dolls. Their plastic faces are cracked and discolored, their eyes lifeless and yet somehow always watching. Some hang from branches by their necks. Others are nailed to the trunks of trees, their limbs missing or twisted at unnatural angles. Even the gentle breeze seems to carry faint whispers, like the distant cries of children. The story begins decades, I'll be back soon, ago with a man named Don Julian Santana Barrera. He was the island's only resident, a recluse who chose to live in isolation far away from the busy life of Mexico City. But according to local legend, Don Julian wasn't alone. Shortly after moving to the island, he made a discovery that would forever change the course of his life and turn the island into one of the most infamous haunted locations in the world. One day, Don Julian found the body of a young girl floating lifelessly in the canal. The exact details of her death remain a mystery. Some say she drowned accidentally. Others believe something darker was at play. But for Don Julian, this tragedy became an obsession. A short time after the girl's death, he found a doll floating in the water near where she had drowned. Believing that the doll belonged to the deceased girl, Don Julian hung it from a tree as a way to honor her spirit and protect himself from evil forces. But one doll wasn't enough. Over the years, Don Julian began collecting more and more dolls. He gathered them from trash piles, found them floating in the canals, and traded with locals for old, broken dolls. Each one was hung somewhere on the island. As time passed, the collection grew, turning the island into a grotesque shrine filled with hundreds of mutilated and weather-worn dolls. Their eyes stared blankly at anyone who dared to visit, their small plastic bodies swaying in the wind like ghostly sentinels. Visitors who made the journey to the island during Don Julian's lifetime often reported feeling uneasy as soon as they arrived. Some claimed to hear the faint giggle of a little girl, even when there were no children nearby. Others swore they saw the dolls' eyes following them, or their heads turning ever so slightly as they passed. Don Julian himself believed that the dolls were possessed by spirits. He often spoke about hearing whispers at night and seeing the dolls move on their own. The obsession took a toll on him. Neighbors who occasionally visited said that Don Julian's behavior became increasingly erratic. He would speak to the dolls as if they were alive, offering them food and praying to them for protection. Many believed that he was losing his grip on reality, that the isolation and the haunting presence on the island were slowly driving him mad. But then, something happened that only deepened the island's terrifying legend. In a chilling twist of fate, Don Julian was found dead in 2001. The circumstances of his death were eerily familiar. He was discovered floating in the same canal where the young girl had drowned all those years before. Locals whispered that the spirits had finally claimed him, that after decades of trying to appease them, Don Julian had become their final victim. After his death, the island remained untouched. The dolls were left exactly where Don Julian had placed them. Over time, the story of the Island of the Dolls began to spread. Tourists started arriving, drawn by curiosity, thrill-seeking, or a strange desire to witness the island's haunted reputation for themselves. Paranormal investigators came with their equipment, trying to capture evidence of the supernatural. Television crews filmed documentaries, and stories about the island circulated online, adding new layers of fear and fascination. But what really happens when you step onto the Island of the Dolls? Many visitors describe an overwhelming feeling of dread the moment their boat reaches the shore. Some say the air feels thick, almost difficult to breathe, as if the atmosphere itself is rejecting their presence. People have reported sudden temperature drops, even on the hottest days. Others claim their electronic devices malfunction or stop working entirely while on the island. Cameras fail to capture images, batteries drain without explanation, and audio equipment picks up strange static or unexplained voices. Then there are the dolls themselves. Their faces are twisted into permanent expressions of fear, sadness, or eerie amusement. Some visitors have said they heard the dolls whispering, their plastic lips unmoving, but voices clearly heard in the air around them. Others insist they've seen dolls blink or shift positions between glances. Skeptics often leave the island with pale faces and shaking hands, unwilling to explain what they've experienced. Locals warn visitors not to disrespect the island or its dolls. Those who mock the legend or dare to remove a doll from the island are said to suffer misfortune or tragedy soon after. There are stories of accidents, sudden illnesses, and even unexplained deaths that happened to people who took something from the island or laughed at its reputation. Whether these stories are exaggerated or not, most who visit leave with a newfound respect for the power the island seems to hold. But perhaps the most disturbing thing about the Island of the Dolls is not the dolls themselves, but the feeling that something unseen still lingers there. An energy that watches, waits, and reacts to every intruder. Paranormal researchers who have spent the night on the island describe hearing footsteps in the dark, distant crying, and the unmistakable sensation of being touched by invisible hands. Some leave in the middle of the night, unable to endure the oppressive fear any longer. Even now, years after Don Julian's death, the island continues to collect new dolls. Visitors bring offerings, hanging new toys from the trees, adding to the growing collection of lifeless guardians. Each doll carries its own story, its own energy, and possibly its own spirit. The line between legend and reality on the Island of the Dolls is thin. Some say it's just a place shaped by tragedy and human imagination. Others believe it's a genuine portal to something dark, a place where the veil between our world and the spirit world is permanently torn. After Don Julian's death, the island didn't fall silent. In fact, many say the paranormal activity only intensified. Tour guides, who now ferry curious visitors to the island, often tell stories of the strange things they've witnessed. Some describe hearing footsteps walking along the wooden docks, even when no one is there. Others talk about feeling watched the entire time they're on the island, a prickling sensation on the back of the neck that never goes away until they've left. Perhaps the most unsettling reports come from tourists who dared to spend more than a few minutes wandering between the trees. One visitor described hearing soft crying coming from deeper within the island, only to find nothing but rows of dolls staring back at them. Another swore they saw one of the dolls raise its arm ever so slightly, as if waving. When they blinked, the doll's arm was back in place, but the memory of that moment haunted them for months. Professional paranormal investigators have tried to document these occurrences. Some brought infrared cameras, EMF detectors, and voice recorders. In several instances, their equipment captured strange fluctuations in electromagnetic fields, even though there's no electrical source on the island. Others recorded audio that, upon playback, revealed faint voices whispering in Spanish. The voices were often too soft to understand fully, but one word stood out repeatedly: Nina, the Spanish word for girl. Skeptics argue that these phenomena could be explained by natural causes: the humidity in the air, the way sound travels across water, and the power of suggestion all play tricks on the mind, they say. But those who've been to the island are not so sure. When you're standing there, surrounded by thousands of broken dolls, hearing footsteps that shouldn't exist, and feeling icy fingers brush across your skin, logic becomes harder to hold on to. There's also the matter of the island's cursed reputation. Several visitors who openly mocked the legend or disrespected the dolls claimed to experience sudden misfortunes after returning home. One man reported that within days of leaving the island, his car was totaled in a freak accident. Another woman, who had laughed about the dolls during her tour, suddenly fell seriously ill with no clear medical explanation. In one of the most widely shared stories, a visitor who took a doll home as a souvenir suffered a series of tragedies, including the loss of a loved one, before desperately returning the doll to the island in hopes of ending the curse. For the locals, these are not coincidences. They believe the island holds a power that should never be disturbed. Some even leave offerings, not just dolls, but also coins, toys, and candles, as a way to appease the restless spirits believed to inhabit the area. What makes the island of the dolls even more unsettling is the way time seems to stand still there. The air feels heavy, the colors muted, as if the island exists slightly out of phase with the rest of the world. Some visitors have described feeling disoriented, losing track of time, or suddenly feeling waves of nausea for no medical reason. One group of tourists recounted how they left the island thinking they'd only been there for an hour, only to discover that nearly 3 hours had passed. And then there are the dreams. Multiple visitors, especially those who spent extended time on the island, report having disturbing nightmares for weeks afterward. These dreams often involve children crying, shadowy figures watching from dark corners, and, of course, dolls coming to life with sinister intentions. Even those who never believed in the supernatural before their visit found themselves waking up in cold sweats, haunted by the memory of the island. Interestingly, even the boat journey to and from the island has its own share of strange occurrences. Some visitors say that, as they drift away, back toward civilization, they feel a sudden shift in the atmosphere, like a heavy weight being lifted from their chest. Others describe glancing back at the island and seeing movement among the trees, as if the dolls themselves are waving goodbye, or maybe beckoning them to return. Taught to this day, the island of the dolls remains one of Mexico's most infamous and feared locations. Its reputation continues to grow as more people share their experiences online, post unsettling photographs, and tell their own first-hand horror stories. Paranormal researchers continue to investigate, though many leave with more questions than answers. The line between legend and reality remains blurred. So what draws people to places like this? Is it pure curiosity, the human need to seek out fear in a controlled environment? Or is it something deeper, something instinctual, that tells us we're brushing up against forces we barely understand? Perhaps the island of the dolls holds the answer. Or perhaps it's just another reminder that some places in this world are better left undisturbed. Before you click away, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more real-life horror stories like this one. Hit the like button if you felt even a hint of fear listening to this tale. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you visited the island of the dolls? Or do you know someone who has? Would you be brave enough to step onto the island yourself? Thanks for watching, and remember, some places never forget you.